Welcome back to the Authentic as Fuck podcast. My name is Sun. I teach storytelling and I'm a marketer. And in this podcast, I talk to entrepreneurs and creators and we learn about their story and kind of the events that happen in their life, the lessons they've learned to become the person they are. So today we have Laura Belgray. Laura is actually the reason why I got started in copywriting, and she's also personally my mentor. I was in her mastermind group, which is amazing. Laura is an award-winning copywriter, founder of Talking Shrimp, and author of Tough Titties on living your best life when you're the effing worst. She's written TV spots for clients like NBC, Fandango, and Bravo, and she helps entrepreneurs find words to make their buyers go bananas. Her courses with Marie Forleo, the Copy Cure, helps you find your voice and sell your anything. Welcome, Laura. Thank you.
Thank you, Son. Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here. It's like feels like a full circle moment because remember we met on a live, in Instagram Live when you were first like exploding your Instagram in, I think it was in 2020, right? I remember like sitting outside and being on your live and talking to you about Shrimp Club, my mastermind that you just mentioned. And you're like, I'm joining that.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That you told me in that call to be a star. And it's kind of like a switch went off in my head where I was still very reserved. You know, I was still kind of like, who am I? Like, whatever. And then I just kind of, from then on, I just let go. I was like, fuck it.
I love that. I love that flipped the switch because it's true. Now it's coming back to me. I remember saying that to you because I'm like, you are a star. You should be acting like one. You should claim that. And here you are, very much a star, more than ever.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, so let's start. I want to start because I typically want to start with kind of like the upbringing. So can you kind of tell us about your upbringing? How did you grow up, and maybe some key lessons that you learned throughout those years? Key life lessons were, and like how we always talk about life lesson is something that, you know, I used to believe this about the world, but actually it turned out that no, I was wrong. It's actually like this.
Okay. Yes. All right. Let's see if I can put it in that context. So I grew up on the Upper West Side, New York City, and had kind of like semi-hippie, not really hippie parents, but like, yeah, very down to earth. My dad was a shrink, very Upper West Side, if you know what that means, if you've lived up there. Dad was a shrink. Mom was in children's book publishing. And I went to a private school across the street from my house, and I was a big dork. My parents were very free to be you and me and did not try to shape me as a cool person or a popular person in any way and let me wear my dipshit clothes. I don't think they even knew they were dipshit clothes. They were not style mongers themselves. And I was obsessed with Rubik's Cube and video games and comic books. And I wore socks with sandals, which is actually now cool in Brooklyn, but was very much not cool at the time. And I like thinking about life lessons and what I believed. I would say up till like 11, I didn't really necessarily believe anything about being yourself. It didn't occur to me not to be. Like when you're before adolescence, you don't really even think about it. You just are who you are and you don't try to be like anybody else. And then this is the first chapter in my book, Tough Titties, which is behind me, is about how Deb Fishbone stole my best friend who was the other Deb. There was Deb Y and Deb F. And Deb F stole my best friend on the first day of 6th grade. And before that, I was just who I was. And we were tight as could be, like two peas in a pod, and had our own secret language and went and played video games together. And, we did everything together. We went off to separate summer camps that summer and had a pact that when we came back to school, we would take Spanish together. It was the year you could start a language. And the first day of school, they told us, okay, everybody taking Spanish, go to the right. Everyone taking French, go to the left. And I was like, all right, Espanol, let's do this. A la derecha. Come on, Deb. And I looked around and I was like, Deb? And she was nowhere to be seen. Then I spotted her going over to the left, sitting down where other Deb was patting the seat next to her, going, Deb, over here. And from that day on, they became Deb Squared. And Deb Fishbone made it her life's work to make my life hell, and turned everybody, including my best friend, Deb, against me. And she turned like everyone in the class, everyone in school against me. They made fun of me. There were rumors about me, not salacious rumors, just like Laura's a spaz. And yeah, it's just my like sixth grade was a living hell. So that's when I decided, that's when I started to believe that that standing out was a bad thing, being yourself was a bad thing, blending in was where it's at, and that one person not liking you could ruin your life. And those are beliefs that I have had to let go of over the years as as I've become an adult, or become once again as I've gone back to being who I am. Um, I realized that it's actually the opposite that's true. In sixth grade, that really is true, that one person disliking you can ruin your life. But when you're an adult, and especially if you have a business, standing out is where it's at. And blending in, being the same as other people, is the kiss of death. And all the things that you were probably tortured for in sixth grade, or whatever grade everyone decided to hate you, are your strengths, are what make you you, and what will bond other people to you, the right people, and make you a superstar. So being a weirdo who, who's got dark sensibilities and kind of still loves Donkey Kong, everything that makes me has become my strength, and definitely my, I hate saying superpower, it's so overused, but in business, for sure, the key to success for me, like being fully who I am.
I love how you kind of encapsulated like the whole thing into like one. It's like perfect. Like you had your story, the lesson, and it's like this is kind of like the point that we're trying to get to by end of the podcast, but we've already.
Well, you asked me for the takeaway. You asked me for the I used to believe, and now I believe. I had to do it. It's like a quick fire challenge on Top Chef.
No, I love it. I loved it, and it's because like I think we all have that one story, like you said, right? The one where that day we realized, holy shit, like I gotta play it cool, right?
Uh-huh.
So
yeah.
I'm really curious as a writer, because I talk to so many people, and I'm trying to teach storytelling, and I'm trying to figure out what is storytelling, and what's the actual skill we need to learn to be good at that, right? Like I'm constantly trying to reverse engineer that. For you as a writer, when did you, because I'm sure you didn't realize at that exact moment, like that's what was happening, right? So at some point as an adult, you have to reflect back on the past and be like, oh, this is what was happening, and how it fits in with being an entrepreneur, how that's opposite of like that and all of that, right?
Yeah.
What does that process look like for you? I'm so curious.
Of what? Of reverse engineering that story in particular to
Yeah,
make sense,
understand.
to make
Yeah,
meaning
number
of my
one,
life.
understanding that that is a significant moment, and then
Yeah.
how it relates to like a key lesson that you learned in your life, right? Like how did you tie that all together? And did
You
that
know,
happen later on in life, throughout your life? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I think with that story in particular, I remember like when I was first really working on my book and had some stories written, like a couple of chapters written, I went to this writing workshop led by Danny Shapiro, who's a major New York Times bestselling author and memoirist and novelist. And I read one of the stories, I think it was I think the one that I brought to that particular, I went twice. The one that I brought this particular time, the first time, was probably, it was either blowjobs I gave in the early 90s, or it was Sia at Studio about about having like the most loser night at the world's most fabled nightclub when I was 14. And so everyone, reads your material and then talks about what stood out for them, goes over it. And somebody asked something to the effect of, "Who hurt you?" Like, what happened to you to make you who you are? Some of it's a little dark or people pleasing, or just, it's about, they're both tales of a loser. And, and I said, I hadn't written this story before, but I said, I think it all goes back to sixth grade when my best friend dumped me for a person with the same name as her, and they became Deb squared. And like, since then, I've been kind of traumatized by anyone, like the idea of anybody not liking me, or, not fitting in. I just started talking about that a little bit, and then thought, I guess that's my origin story. And
Mm.
so I decided to write it and work it into the book. And the process of that, like, putting stories into a book forces you to make meaning of them. Same with, an email or telling it on a podcast or whatever. You have to come to a conclusion. Like, why am I telling this? What does it mean? What is the takeaway here? Where's the arc? And so I that is what I found in it. And I also told that story before I put it in my book. I told it to somebody who was helping me come up with like a signature talk. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I didn't have that story to tell at the beginning of my signature talk, my signature
Mm-hmm.
story, my origin story. I didn't have a rock bottom moment, a rise from the ashes, a time that I was homeless or sleeping on my sister's couch, and then discovered the webinar, and created a career for myself. So she said, like, what stands out to you as a pivotal moment in your life? And I told her that story. And she was like, oh, okay, here's how you're going to frame it. Like, and here's how it's going to go into your talk. And I did put it into my talk, and then I put it into the book.
Mm.
So, like, thinking about how a story fits in, being an entrepreneur, having a business is the greatest, I would say, fire under your butt to make meaning of your stories, because you got to come up with
Mm-hmm.
something that's
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
stick with people and make your
yeah,
life sound like it makes sense.
yeah. Like
Right.
it's almost like it makes me want to write a book just so that I can answer those questions.
Right. Exactly. It's a great exercise.
So I guess that is true, right? Like maybe because I'm starting to see this too. Like writing process is I feel like more about discovery and me learning more about myself and learning more about something rather than I found that writing is actually more of a learning tool more than teaching tool.
Yeah. Yes, it is both, but I agree. I mean, first of all, when you write it, just the act of writing, I don't know, there's some sciencey thing about how it
Mm,
creates like new neural pathways in your brain, or gets the synapses
mm,
firing or something like that.
mm.
And so I find that the more you write, the more ideas come up as you're writing. And it
Yeah,
also helps you just find answers on the page.
yeah,
Like, what is this about? And you kind of ask the work, what is this
yeah.
about?
I also think that writing workshops like that, I guess, kind of like therapy is a little bit similar to that too. But in those situations, because like I feel like for me, most of my ideas come like that when somebody asks me a question that I haven't thought about, and it's just naturally I answer it, and like you did, right? It's like, who hurt you? And then you're like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so, so I feel like the workshops. Like what? Do you find the workshops helpful? Like, uh,
Totally. I haven't taken that many. Like, I took two with Danny and loved them. They were not sit down and writing workshops. They were more bring your stuff and everyone discusses it. workshops. And it was really helpful to both times. I think she always creates a word cloud for you, like writes down the things that people are saying so that you have this word cloud that is reflected back to you. So it's always helpful to have your work, your words reflected back to you. Like, what are other people getting from it? What's sticking with them? And then a different kind of writing workshop that I've been in is like a writing retreat with my mentor, Suzanne Kingsbury, who she runs this academy and movement called Gateless Writing. And it's fantastic. And that's where you sit, like she gives a prompt and you write for 20 minutes or sometimes 30 minutes. And then everyone reads their stuff out loud. And again, people take notes on and then repeat back to you the words and phrases that stood out to them and the most powerful parts of it. And that's what the gateless method is all about. It's like finding where the power is in the work. And I'm very into it. And I think it definitely, it gets you excited about everything you have to say. There's always a moment of nervousness before the prompt comes where you're like, I don't know what I'm going to write about. What if I have nothing? What if I get the prompt and I have nothing? And there's always something. So you are always discovering things that you have to talk about and write about. And I
How
love
long do you
that
have
too.
to write? Like,
Usually it varies. Sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes it's 30 minutes. And my friend, I forget, do you know Terry Trespicio?
yeah,
Maybe you
the
met her. I think you
the
might have
TED
met
Talk.
her at Shrimp Club.
Yeah, she's
Yes,
the one
right,
who did the TED
exactly.
Talk, right? Yeah,
That's correct.
yeah,
Yes, she has a TED Talk called Stop Searching for Your Passion
yeah.
and a book called Unfollow Your Passion. And she's the one who introduced me to Suzanne and the Gateless method. And she runs a program called The Studio, which is amazing. And it's like a yoga studio for writing. So you can drop in on these writing sessions every
Yeah,
day of
like
the week. There's at least one a
physical
day.
in person,
What?
like
Not
physical.
physical. It's not physical
This is
or in person. It's
oh
like a
shit.
yoga studio in the sense that you can check each day, like what time, who's teaching
It's like a
today or who's
class.
running a
Okay,
session.
okay.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
exactly. Yeah.
Shit.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah,
And yeah,
I want to
it's
do that.
great. And
You
yeah,
just
you
gave me an
should join it.
idea.
It's not
Yeah,
expensive. I think it's like
yeah,
99 a month or 97
yeah.
a month. And you can go and sit there and write every weekday. I think maybe even on the weekends she has some where
So
she's
like it
adding in.
forces you to sit there and write, and then doing
Yes.
through there, it makes you realize that once I start writing, actually, I have more idea to write, and like that,
Right.
and you keep doing that, and so I guess like yeah, it's so
Yeah,
great.
exactly. It keeps your fingers moving on the keyboard or the pen moving if you actually write by
So
hand.
when
I
you
can't
tell
anymore.
that, when you share, and then now you write, and then you share that story, and then what is that process like when somebody people start kind of giving you the words that they connect with? Like how does that go? Does that shock you? Is it surprising, or is it like uh,
No, I think it reinforces I guess your writing confidence. And it's an exercise for them too, like for everyone who's giving feedback,
mm,
because it shows them the possibilities, like words you can use, ways that you
uh,
can write. So it opens their minds too, and then just reinforces to you the power of your work. And people point things out that you didn't even know you were doing, that it turns out you were probably doing subconsciously, whether it was
yeah.
intentional or not. It's like, oh, I didn't even
That's
realize
what I
I
was gonna
circled
say.
back to that idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say because like sometimes like a lot of us when words come out, because
Hmm.
like uh that Red Hot Chili Pepper song like "Dream of Californication" like that.
Yeah.
Like he said
Semi.
that the first time they sung that song, they didn't know what that meant, right? Like
Oh,
they have to kind of, and a lot of musicians do this, and a lot of poets do this too, right? They just write and then they're not sure exactly why the words came out in that order,
yeah.
but then there is a reason behind it, and I love that you said that because like I I feel like as a feedback giver, I'm going to try to look for those patterns or something like that, right? So it forces me to analyze your writing, right? And then
Yes.
you, as the person getting that, you're like, oh, that's great. And then next time I write, like, I think it's like a practice for us to analyze our words rather than just, you know, just saying it or something like that.
Yeah. I agree. And it's it kind of shows you that you have genius that you didn't know was there. And like, I don't know if you're anything like me, you are so jealous of people who say, "Oh, I didn't write my book. I kind of downloaded it. I
Mm-hmm.
channeled it." People who
Yeah,
are like getting
yeah,
divine downloads and
yeah,
it's just pouring through them and they're so connected with the muse. I don't believe all of them, but some of them I do. And
yeah.
like, oh, I want that. Like, imagine having no torture, just sitting down and having words pour through you. And I do find that sometimes I access that when I'm in one of those writing sessions. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
it is possible. And that's
Mm-hmm.
always a really exciting moment. And then in terms of like giving the feedback, I remember being, I guess I was in high school. My friends and I went to a basketball game at another school, and I was a terrible athlete. Like there was you got the awards for the athlete awards in my school were called numerals, and I was dangerously close to being in the never got a numeral club because
Uh-huh.
I was just so bad and usually skipped gym. And we went to this basketball game and the team was really good. And I remember being so impressed, like noticing the way they passed the ball, like from the chest. And the next day in gym, I was like a rock star in basketball. We were playing basketball then. And the teacher was like, Laura, where did that come from? Good going. Nice pass. And like, nice basket. And suddenly, like for that one day, I was like a really good basketball player. I was suddenly an athlete. And there's that effect of seeing something done really well that in some rare cases you absorb it
Yeah,
and it becomes part of you. And I love that effect.
yeah. Yeah, I guess maybe that's kind of what they call, maybe like, you know, when you're writing and you're in a flow state or something like that. And
Yeah.
maybe that's what some people call channeling.
Yes. Yes,
I
exactly.
don't know. But yeah,
That's
I do
the
believe that.
same thing, same
Yeah.
exact thing.
Because I always ask people, like, when I look at a design or writing or something like that, how did you come up with that? And they're like, I don't know, it came out of me. That's what they say, right?
Right.
And that I've never personally experienced that ever. I'm such an overthinker that,
Uh-huh.
you know, like if you go to, like, I have a client, I have an event that I went to for one of my clients where one of the things, like, she just says, get up and just move, dance like crazy, like however you want. And I couldn't. I was so
You
self-conscious
can't.
and I just couldn't do that, right? And that's how I feel when somebody just says, write whatever comes, let your two hands do the writing. I can't, like, I'm like overthinking. No, I don't want to say that.
Right. Yes. No, I've never found my hands doing the writing for me. It's definitely coming from my brain. But don't and by the way, I cannot just dance in those classes without being self-conscious ever. And I think that everybody looks ridiculous and I don't feel like joining them. But when it comes to writing, like, don't you ever look back at writing that you did before, like a couple of years ago or even last year, or story that you told, and think, oh my gosh, I could never think of that now. Like I said that really well, or not
Mm,
even recognize it as
mm,
yours.
yeah,
Has that ever happened to you?
yeah. It's usually something from a long time ago. I'm like, holy
Yeah,
shit, I was pretty smart back then.
right, exactly. But that's just an example of how you probably did, in a sense, channel it, even if you think you were overthinking
Mm,
it.
mm, mm,
Um, I feel like what you write in one moment, there's this magic of like the way it comes out of you in one moment is not the same as the way it might come out of you tomorrow. And if you have those moments of not even recognizing something that you created as yours or not, like wondering how that came out of you, I think then you were really in flow state or connected and not
mm.
overthinking it the way you think you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually, like, those are when I look back at those things. those were created the time when I used to be obsessed.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Now I'm not
Yes.
as obsessed about that thing anymore. Like,
No, totally. And don't you have those things that you used to say all the time, like when you were teaching,
yeah,
maybe 3 years ago or 4 years
yeah.
ago, where you're like, shoot, that was really good. I don't feel
Yeah.
like saying that anymore. Like I got so sick of hearing myself say
Oh
that I
yeah,
dropped
maybe.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's what's happening. Yeah, like I said it say so many times that it doesn't feel special anymore.
Right.
But then I do this now. Like right now, I actually went through this week where I'm kind of okay. Let me really figure out what the meat of it is within Night Owl Nation and try to figure out reverse engineer and trying to structure it well. And then I did that, and I was like, "Oh, this is perfect. This is how it's gonna work." But when I looked at it, I'm like, "Wait, this is the exact same thing I said 2 years ago."
Right.
It's-
Yeah, exactly.
so
No,
it was like,
totally.
yeah, it was like
Well,
I was saying the right thing the whole time. It's just I
right. I
got
was
bored
saying
of it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you just reminded me that I told you to be a star, that was a thing that I was really fixated on at that time. And because somebody just that year, the year before, in my dance class who was a total rock star in the class. Like she just always had the moves down pat. She was so good. She was a Pilates instructor also. And I followed her on Instagram and I told her while we were waiting for class to start, I said, "Oh, I liked I saw your stories about your Pilates class this week. Those were really good." And she's like, "Ugh, thanks. I'm like, "What's ugh?" And she's like, "I just hate being so like, look at me, look at me." And
Mhm.
I was like, well, but people need you to be look at me, look at me. Like they need to see
Mhm.
what a star you are so that they get inspired and join your class. And I pointed to our teacher, Sibo, who is such an incredible star. And I was like, what if he was like, I don't want to post any videos of me dancing. I don't want to be all look at me, look at me. Like, would you ever even have found his class or been inspired to do what he's doing? She was like, no, I guess you're right. And so that's where I got hooked on that idea of like being the star, being willing to be a star and
Mhm.
being willing to be all look at me, look at
Yeah.
me. So that was just a kind of a trope, like a lesson that I was really into then and repeated a lot. And it obviously had an effect on people,
Yeah.
including you. Like you
Is
said, it flipped a
that
switch.
would you say that's one of key lessons that you learned in life? Like that
Yeah.
showing
Oh,
up
for
and
sure. Sure.
not being
Because
unapologetic is the
yeah,
word that
being
you use. Yeah.
unapologetic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because we grow up being told not to show off.
Yeah.
We grow up thinking showing off is bad and yeah, trying to be the center of attention makes you look foolish and too much of a pick me.
Mhm.
And so I did realize one day, I'm like, that's what it's all about. You have to be that way. You have to show off. You have to promote yourself. And not only is it your obligation to yourself and like a key to success, but it is also a gift to other people. Like you are
Mhm.
denying them the chance to be inspired by you, the chance to find you, to discover
Mhm.
you if you hide, if you decide, I don't want to be a show off. Like, mom was right, dad was right, the teacher
Mhm.
was right that nobody likes a show off. And
Mhm.
so I'm just going to stand here in the shadows. So definitely one
I
of the
guess it's
lessons.
related. It's related to being yourself too, right? I guess.
Yeah. Yes,
When do
for sure.
when do you think you started to realize that number one that you did kind of you were not showing up as yourself, number one, and then also that you were not showing off. Like
Yeah.
when when did you start realizing that?
I think probably when I had a business. Like once I started my own business and started to take it seriously and decide like this is my career now.
Hmm.
And I'm going to have to brag about myself and people. Not everyone likes it. Some people don't like it when you do that, but
Mm.
other people do. They're delighted by it and inspired by it. And I had to do a lot of self convincing in order to do that, to say like, oh, I'm
Oh,
gonna take
like
the spotlight. And I told myself
you
this
read like mantras and
lie.
stuff.
No, I didn't. I've tried that, by the way. I've tried like affirmations,
Uh-huh.
and I don't not believe in them, but it's just they feel silly to me. I know the people they work
Mm-mm.
for, but no, I think like I was telling myself this lie for the first few or several years of my business, which was that because I'm in the business of copywriting, it's not about me. My business isn't about me.
Mm-mm.
Even though I was a personal brand, even though I was a solopreneur, I'd say, "Oh, it's not about me. I want my website and everything around my brand to be a tabula rasa, like just a blank slate that people could look at and say like, "Oh, I want better copy." And then they would maybe
Mm.
look into me. And I discovered or just came to terms with the fact that first of all, you got to have pictures of yourself,
Mm.
and people need to see your face and hear your voice, and those things really work to make you a successful brand, especially if you are a personal brand. If you are the face of the
So
brand, you got to show your face.
once you started seeing it work and actually
Hmm.
like saw a return on investment, that's kind of
Yeah,
like when you're like, okay, I have to do this.
yeah. Like from until I think around 2019. Yeah, I think until 2019 when I rebranded my website,
Mhm.
there was only one picture of me on the whole website.
Mhm.
And it was on my about page, and it was a picture that was taken at an event that I had spoken at. So I had that one picture that they gave me, and I never
Mhm.
wanted to have a photo shoot. And I think it was because a photo shoot was expensive and a pain in the ass. And so I just didn't feel like putting one
Mhm.
together. I just didn't know. Like, I'm an avoidant person.
Mhm.
So I'll create a story of why I shouldn't do that to
Mhm.
excuse why I'm not doing it. So I was like, no, we don't need pictures of me on the website. I'm not going to do a photo shoot, etc. And then I started getting on podcasts in like 2017 and started pitching articles to publications. My friend Selena Sue helped me start doing that.
Mhm.
And once I saw the effect that that had of making myself a little bit famous, just, in very small circles,
Mhm.
business famous, I like to call it.
Mhm.
When I saw the effect that that had, I realized, okay, I've been lying to myself, like
Yeah.
hiding. I do not
Yeah.
need to be a blank slate. That doesn't serve anybody, to hide my face, to hide who I am. I was always I was
Yeah.
always who I am in my copy, and
Yeah.
people responded so well to that. I should have known, like, okay, my
Yeah.
face should be there
I
too.
want to go back to that too, but like
Yeah.
what you just said right there is like so, because I think I feel like I've had that experience too. I'm like, okay, like I was stupid this whole time, like not wanting to show up and things like that.
Yeah.
But I also had that similar. I've had that similar experience so many times. I had that experience about money. For the longest time, I used to say, I don't care about money. I don't need to make. Money is not going to make me happy.
Uh-huh.
I rather be happy, right? But then
Yeah.
once I started making money,
Hmm.
I was like,
I
holy
want more
shit.
of
Like,
that.
yeah, I was wrong. You know what
Uh-huh.
I mean? So like
I sure do.
I was able to see how much it amplified even like my fulfillment and my happiness. And so yeah, that's such an important lesson, I think, that we
Yeah,
both
I think
learned. Yeah.
we use those little lies we tell ourselves as a cop out. I mean, I still do it
Mhm.
with all kinds of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like, Facebook ads are cheesy. I wouldn't do
Yeah.
that. I'm like, ugh, I should have been doing Facebook ads all along, especially when they were cheap. What is wrong with me? But yeah, like I don't need money. I do this for fulfillment, not the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Um, yeah, once you get some, you're like, nope. I
Yeah,
want
because
that money.
you can literally see like how much impact you're making to other people, right? Like
Right.
not just people you're able to provide, but also like your employees. like
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So
And
yeah,
yourself. And there's
yeah,
choice, then you're like,
yeah.
no, I don't
It
want to
even
sit and
makes,
coach.
yeah, it even makes that fulfillment part better. when you,
Oh yeah. I find making money very fulfilling.
yeah,
And I
exactly.
always have. That's something I've never apologized for. When everyone's like, I
Yeah,
don't want to make money, I just want to change lives, or I want to change the world. I've always
yeah.
been like,
So
great if
let's
I
go.
change lives.
So let's go
But
there. So
uh-huh.
that unapologetically showing up as yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when did you when did you realize that, number one, that you were not doing that since you were 11?
Yeah.
And then when did you realize that actually when you do show up as yourself, it actually helps you in business? Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I don't know if I really had a turning point that sticks out to me of when I was like, I've been not myself this whole time.
Hmm.
And now I'm going to start being myself. I think it's more like I was kind of shy and self edited and self conscious for a long time. And like through college too. Like there when I'm around people who make me feel comfortable, then I'm very much myself. But when I'm trying to be liked and trying to fit in or find my people, I find that or I would find that I wasn't. And I think maybe it was after college when when I started bartending, I would find that when I was really myself and felt comfortable and was joking around, people would say like, "Oh, you're funny," and they liked that I was just so me. I was a terrible bartender and
Hmm.
made terrible tips, so I'm not going to say the money came pouring in, but I think I
You saw the
became
reaction.
determined. Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw the reaction, and I think I became determined. Maybe I didn't really think about it this way, but looking back, maybe I felt like I had been stifled by trying to be liked
Hmm.
and making that so important and feeling self-conscious and second guessing how people thought about me. Maybe I felt like as revenge, I wanted to make a living and make a life being absolutely
It was
myself
like
and went
you being
about
rebellious. like,
yeah, exactly. And
it's like,
like
I'll show you.
right, I'll show you a big fuck you to Deb Fishbone, who had like tamped down my selfness,
Uh,
who had
it
taught
also
me.
sounds.
Yeah, go
It
ahead.
also sounds like your parents were never like that to begin with. Like your parents were very kind of rooted, and they didn't really care about how other people maybe perceive them, and
No,
maybe no.
no, no, they weren't. Yeah, no, you're
Oh
correct.
yeah, I'm right. Like they weren't. Yeah.
Yes, you were right about that. My dad was my ugh, God, did my dad not care what people thought of him? He was the most embarrassing person on earth.
Yeah.
'Cause he would go out there
So
if there
that's
was
probably ingrained in you. Yeah.
yeah, it might be. It also just made me horrified. I mean, I was horrified by it growing up. So I wasn't like, I want to be that way. But later on, I was like, that's a pretty great way to be,
Yeah.
liking yourself enough to
Yeah.
go out and I would still never do this, but like dance in the street when you walk past a drummer, a street drummer. It's like, Dad, stop. You're so embarrassing. And he was. He would go up to anybody and say anything he wanted. He was so
Yeah.
unfiltered. I mean, it really was embarrassing to
But
all
I
of
guess
us, but
what I'm
it was
trying to
him.
say is
Hmm.
a lot of Korean families that I see,
Yeah.
in Korean culture, there's this the superficial thing, like, oh, like they compare, my son went to this college versus your son went to that college, like
Yeah.
what car I drive, like what house, how many bedrooms you live in, what all of those kind of things. So that's a very part of the culture. So a lot of kids grow up watching that from their parents, and they learn
Right.
that, right, subconsciously. They learn the that I have to fake it, like that fake
Hmm.
it value, right? I need to make it seem like I have more than I really have, like, and they learn that subconsciously, that later on, I think they might not able to get out of that. But it sounds like we all go through puberty, right, where we
Yeah.
try to fit in and try to act cool, try to act like someone we're not. But because I definitely did. But I think because my values were instilled in me, that like being fake is kind of disgusting, or being fake is like yucky. that
Right.
later on it caught up with me. I kept feeling every time I was doing something fake, every time I was fake laughing, every time I was like
Oof.
a lot like not being like truly honest, I felt a little bit like guilty inside and a little bit of me die, right? And that's what eventually caused me to change for me.
Is there anything more embarrassing, like just cringy than fake laughing? When you hear the like when you laugh a little too loudly and you don't mean it, and then you hear the laugh
Mm,
echoing in your head, and you're like, "How
hmm.
loud was that? Did
Yeah,
everyone else catch that that was the most fake laugh?" I just that's a good detail. Yeah.
yeah, things like that. But I that wasn't even it. I used to lie about things that I don't even know why I lied about. Just to show off, right? Just to
Uh-huh.
make it seem like So yeah, but it all caught up with me at the end. I felt like this huge
Yeah.
like burden. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And here you are unburdening with an authentic as fuck podcast. So that's perfect. Right.
So so here's what I wanted to ask you. So
Okay.
one of the things that I used to struggle with as a copywriter
Yeah.
is I'm like, how do I find that moment? Like, because you said like there's no like aha moment where I just
Mm-hmm.
changed. It was like,
Yeah.
and I feel like for most of us, it's like that. It's not like one day like something
Right. The
happened and
clouds
yeah.
parted. Yeah.
And I feel like when I try to force that to happen, it just becomes fake. And it like I try to force a moment like that in a story, it doesn't
Yeah.
work. So how do you like deal with that?
Yeah.
Like
I
I
don't
have my kind of I guess workaround, but like how do you deal with that? Like finding that transformation story.
I don't think I have mastered that. I don't think that I find a lot of those like aha moments
Uh,
in
I
my
never find it.
stories of like that moment where everything changed. That
Uh,
moment where you realized you had to
one
become
day.
someone else. Right, one day. Like that one split second where you had the realization. I think maybe I'm just slower than most people, but those things happen for
No, I
me
think it's
over time.
because we none of us learn lessons like that, right? It's none of us
Right.
change overnight. So
Right.
I heard Dax Shepard,
Oh, I love
armchair
him.
expert. Yeah. So he was
Mhm.
talking about how like he was talking about his rock bottom moment. But he said that his rock bottom wasn't really that rock bottom. And he says that rock bottom moment is just the moment where you had enough and you decided to turn around because you could have went lower than that.
Right.
And he talks
Right.
about how, and this made sense to me. So what I do now is because whenever I work with clients or people, and we try to find that aha moment, we can never find it. So what I do now is like we look at the progression of like I used to be like this, but now I'm like this, and then I just say, can you just give me a few example moments that shows you what the new life was like, and then can you show me some example of what the old life was like? And I just tell the story like that. I found that that's more powerful than trying to fake a turning point moment.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. That's a good way of looking at it. Although I'd still be like, I don't know. I don't know if I know when it happened. Like I don't see change happening. It's like, when you're not old enough yet to see this. Like, how iPhone has that iPhoto has that for you thing
Oh yeah,
on
yeah.
your home screen, and it shows you pictures from like last year, or it'll be like, you know, portraits over the years, or out to dinner in 2020. And I see those and I'm like, oh my God, when did I get so old? Like I was so young 4 years ago. I can't believe, like, when did my face change? When did I look total, become who I am now? Um, and I think it's more like that. Like change is really so gradual and imperceptible, at least in my life. I don't have a lot of those big moments where everything changed. Like just looking back, I'm like, oh, I did that. And then I did that. I guess this is what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did that. And now here I am. Um, there's like, There's one person, Chris Winfield, when he used to teach productivity workshops
Mm.
that I went to once, and I've heard him tell the story a couple of times. And I had like real story aha moment envy when he told the story of how when his daughter was 3, like he was running an agency, and when his daughter was like 3 years old, he she said she was hungry and he was gonna, like, I guess, try and make something for her. And then he saw her go in the freezer, get out a frozen pizza, pop it in the microwave, press in, like she's 3 or 4 years old, press in the amount of time it takes to nuke the pizza, put it on a plate, and start to eat it. And he was like, wow, I have been a really absent dad. Like, I've been so
Mm.
consumed by my work that my 3 or 4 year old daughter has had to teach herself how to make dinner, how to make a slice of pizza. And that was such a good story, like such a good
Yeah.
aha
It's
moment. I was like,
relatable
where's
too. Yeah.
mine? It's, yeah, it's
Yeah.
relatable. And I'm like, God, I wish I had a bunch of those. I don't
Uh,
have really
I don't
those
either.
moments. I
And,
would have to
and
fake
I
it.
think the reason why we don't is because, like, because like most of us, it doesn't happen like that. Because that same event of his daughter doing that has happened few times before.
Right.
It's just that he didn't notice it
Yeah.
until now, right? Like, you know what I mean? But what happens is, I think it's the reason why we get into like toxic job, like situations, or
Hmm.
toxic relationships, and we can't get out, and we repeat it and over it, because I think we repeat these patterns over and over, and we don't see it and we don't recognize it until one day that happens. But for some of us, like for me, I guess I do recognize it,
Hmm.
but I recognize that I'm doing something bad, but I just
Right.
can't get myself to do something about it, right?
Yeah,
But then over
exactly.
times, I do change, because maybe I see one success, and that gives me the confidence to actually keep doing it and change, and change. But then when I look back, I can definitely see, like, I remember when I was like had a huge ego, right? Like, I would go into any room and I wouldn't like let anybody talk, right? Like, I would just be like, no, blah, 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 blah. And I was definitely, that was the old me. And I've changed over time. I became a little bit more, and I've learned a little bit more humility and things like that. And I'm definitely changed. But you can't, I don't know exactly which point, right? But what I can
Yeah.
do is I can give you examples of when I used to be a dick, and I can give you
Uh-huh.
examples of, how I handle situations differently now. And that's
Right.
like all I can do in terms of storytelling.
When did you transform from Dick to who you are now?
Yeah. In the past 10 years of it. That's why I love the Simon Sinek's question, where he asks this guy, is like, when did you fall in love with your wife? Like, when was the exact moment you fell in love with your wife? Like, and it's kind of like that,
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And it's like, is there one more moment, or are we fishing for it and then we make it that moment? Like,
Yeah,
that one sounds good.
yeah.
Now I could
One
see
thing
how
that
therapy. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
one thing that I really found inspiring about you, and this
Hmm.
happens almost every time I see you and every time I hear from you, is like, obviously, how unapologetic you are. And you somehow seem to find the thing that I guess a lot of us are thinking, didn't even realize that we were faking. But then, and one of those things is like, you call yourself like uh unapologetic, uh lazy worker, or
Lazy
couch,
person.
yeah,
Hmm.
lazy person, or something like that, right? And that was so profound for me when you first were talking about that, right? Because that's something that I feel like a lot of people deep inside feel,
Yeah.
but they never voice. They would never
Right.
voice it outwards. Yeah.
It's true. People are kind of gobsmacked by that. Like, I have it in my Instagram bio, or whenever I say it, people are like, oh my God, I love that. I am too. I'm a lazy person too. That's amazing. Decline. Um, and yeah, I kind of, I really enjoy saying things out loud that I'm thinking, and I don't know, I guess being honest about myself, sometimes to a fault, but people really appreciate it because it shows them it's okay. It gives them permission to be who
Mm-mm.
they are, especially in the ways that they identify with me and what I'm saying. Like, oh, I
Mm.
guess it's okay that I'm lazy. I guess I can admit that I'm lazy.
Yeah, that's exactly what it does for me. It feels like you're giving us permission to be lazy. It feels like you're giving us permission to, you know.
Right. I mean, people will go to, the ends of the earth to tell you that you're not lazy. Like, you're not lazy, you're just burned out, or you're not lazy, you're just disillusioned, or you're not in flow. And I'm like, what if you are lazy? Why is that so
Yeah,
bad? Maybe you are
yeah,
lazy, and that's okay. Or they'll say, it's not selfish. Self care isn't selfish. Like,
yeah,
what's wrong with being selfish? I'm
yeah,
selfish. I'm totally a selfish
yeah.
person.
I actually do say that too. I recently started saying that I'm selfless because I'm selfish because
Interesting. I cannot claim that I'm selfless, but I am selfish. Also unapologetically selfish. I'm like, yeah,
um
that's, yeah, lazy and selfish.
how, where do you think, first of all, when did you start saying that, the unapologetically lazy person thing, like I and how, like were you always like that? Well, first of all, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Were you always
Yeah,
like
what
that?
does it mean? Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there are ways in which I'm not lazy. If I'm obsessed, then I'm not lazy. Then I'm
Mhm,
driven and motivated, and well, two things. But I'm very lazy about a lot of supposed tos in life. I am lazy about doing all the. I'm lazy about paperwork. I'm lazy
mhm,
about cleaning. Like, just anyone who thinks I'm not lazy based on my business success can just ask my husband, who even has to beg me to lift my feet when he comes around with the vacuum.
mhm.
Like, he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry
Yeah.
that I'm making you lift your feet." Am. I would say I am lazy about things that are fall under the category of adulting,
Mm,
and I do not feel bad for loving to lie down and watch a lot of TV, and sometimes prefer that to working. And I think I started talking about it when there was um, a coach who wanted to barter with me. She wanted me to do copywriting for her, or give her a course for free or something, in return for her teaching me how to take breaks.
mm.
And I was like, have we met? She said she was a fan of my writing. I was like, have you read anything about me? Because I do not need help to take breaks. I need help to stop taking breaks, really. And so I think that's when I first put it on the page, like crystallized it. I wrote a blog post about it,
Mhm.
or something that people went nuts for. And it's like, oh, people really like to hear about how I'm lazy. So I'll just keep talking about
Yeah.
it.
Maybe it's because like we're so used to the hustle culture of like you always have to be in discomfort and blah 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 blah,
Yeah.
and and then we're like thinking that, oh, like I'm not like that, so that means I can't be successful. And then here you
Right.
come. You're like, I make money sitting on my couch. Like, do you know what I mean? So you like
Yeah.
you talk about working on your couch and things like that.
Yeah.
So
And I feel like I have to create an environment where I feel lazy. I feel like when I'm working, I'm doing it in a lazy way in order to
mm,
convince myself to get
mm,
started.
mm,
Like, I really love my comfort zone.
mm,
I
mm, mm,
love, sometimes I'll play, old episodes of Bravo shows that I've already watched while I'm
mm,
working, to make me feel like I'm cheating, like
mm,
I'm,
mm,
we're just working in front of the TV. That feels lazy to me. Being on my couch feels lazy to me. And so that makes me feel good about it's just, it gives me the push I need to to get working sometimes.
Do you feel like you're a little bit rebellious, like
Yeah.
in nature?
Yes. Yes, definitely. I don't
Yeah.
like authority. I'm not the kind of rebel who has like tattoos and has done drugs and
Mm.
lived hard at all. I'm a good girl. I'm like the most rebellious good girl you've ever met. I have my kind of quiet rebellion
Hmm.
where this drives Stephen, my husband, crazy. Like I'm the last person to buckle my seatbelt on the plane. And like I'm still on my phone or still on my laptop when they're like, please start putting away large
Hmm.
devices. And I wait for them to come around and make me. I'm rebellious when I feel like authority is arbitrary and doesn't make sense. I don't like
Hmm.
being told
Yeah.
what to do.
Or it sounds like, are you also like that about trends that doesn't make sense? Like like before
Yes.
you said supposed
Or
to's, right?
yes,
You're
yes,
supposed to do that.
especially business trends. Yeah, I'm like, screw that. Or even, to my own detriment, some that do make sense. I'm like, I don't want to, therefore I can't.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you don't have to, even if.
Right. Sometimes it would behoove you, like where what I mentioned before. I didn't want to do Facebook ads. I just
Oh
didn't
yeah,
feel
so the
like
other way.
dealing with
Okay.
them, so I skipped them.
Yeah.
I never wanted to do like I've never wanted to do a 5-day challenge. Like,
Hmm.
no, I just don't have it in me. As soon as I heard, like, oh, and then you hire
Do you
5
feel
coaches,
like
and
you're actually making a calculated decision? You're like, I'm willing to lose, like, let go of this opportunity because I don't want to make this 5-day challenge, or you know what I mean? Something like that.
yeah, sometimes, like, so
Yeah.
sometimes it's to my benefit, and sometimes it's to my detriment. I think, um, like, I like the job and the business that I have constructed, and I like that it has worked for the most part to do it the lazy way. But now in the changing environment, like business climate, where it's not as easy to sell things and people want more, I'm like, oh God, maybe I should have made a practice of giving more, of doing these 5-day challenges and constructing all this free hoopla around my thing. But I'd really just like to, I probably, I wouldn't have launched anything. I wouldn't have sold
Yeah.
anything if that's what it took if
Yeah.
I decided it's going to require that. So,
Even you saying this right now just is like a, you know, is like a perfect example of like your authenticity and vulnerability, in my opinion, right?
thank you.
And I just like, yeah, you just found a way to just do it your way, and you're like, you're not trying to be a billionaire, like,
Yeah.
you know.
Sure, I'd love $1 billion, but no,
Yeah,
I'm not because I'm not willing to do what it takes.
yeah,
Like,
and so you understand that, and
yeah.
you know you've created that, and I just feel like so many people out there want that. What so many people out there want what you have, which is, so many people out there that I talk to, their goal is not to be a billionaire. They're like, everybody
Right.
tells me, oh, I just wish I can have enough money in the bank just so that I don't have to worry about, you know,
Yeah.
paying bills, and like they just want financial security, right? While doing what they want to do, like
While
big
doing
lazy.
what they want to do. Yeah. I mean, I have a friend who was trying to get me to start a podcast. It was like a couple of years ago. Should I have listened to her and started one? I suppose so. But the idea of setting up something that has to be constantly fed, just beyond writing my emails. I like writing my emails to my list
Mhm.
on a regular basis. I enjoy that part of the job, and I feel like I can do that. I can keep that up. But
Mhm.
a podcast that would require appointments, like constant appointments with people, or coming up with something to say and then recording and sitting there and being like, ugh, I got to retake. Like if I did them solo, I know it would be retake after retake kind of thing. That just made me feel like I can't do that. I like, and my friend said, even if it makes you millions of dollars, and I was like, yeah, even then. Also, maybe because it wasn't guaranteed. And to make the millions of dollars, I would have to do it in a way that I didn't want to. It's like,
Yeah. No, that's what I
right.
meant. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I meant. Like, you have to, like, okay, let me ask you something.
Hmm.
Was there a time when you weren't like that and you got burnt out? Or were you
No.
always like pretty, you kept yourself pretty,
Limit. Yeah. I've always limited what I am willing to do. So I have experienced burnout for sure. Um, I've had times where I'm really gung ho, obsessed with my business and working constantly, and it's working, and things are going great. Especially like, I don't know, 2020 felt like I was never not working.
Mhm,
Um, it felt like a gold rush of selling anything online.
mhm,
Everybody, people were clamoring for it, and there was this constant need, and I had all these interviews scheduled, and it felt like a peak moment for me in my business. And for sure I felt like a burnt piece of toast by the end of that year, or maybe the middle of that year, which carried into the next year. And
mhm.
then I was so that burnout definitely leads to, like, I have real dips when I don't have the stamina to keep going like that. And
Yeah.
um I'm not so huge on nature metaphors, but you do look at, crops, flowers, trees, plants, things that grow in nature, and they all have seasons. And there's very little out there that grows constantly,
Mhm,
that
mhm.
keeps growing and never stops during the winter or
Yeah.
whatever season it is.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's always ups and downs, and I can, I've been through that wave so many times that I can even feel it when I'm on the downward or upward. Like, it's like
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, yeah, you can feel it. Sometimes it's like, "Oh my God, I'm me again. I'm energized again. I'm upset. I think I'm getting obsessed in a good way with my
Yeah.
business again." But then you can also feel it when you're like, "I suddenly hate everything that I have to do
Uh-huh.
and don't want to look at it." And
Yeah.
every time like, I go through phases where I'm waking up every morning with anxiety about all the balls I've dropped in my business, all the things I should have done or should have done sooner, and have been avoiding. And that all that makes me want to do is watch Bravo shows on Peacock.
It sounds like you know what you want and you know what you
Mhm.
don't want, because most people
Yeah.
that start a podcast, in their mind, they're like, oh, it shouldn't take that much time, blah blah blah, and then they just started, and then like 2 episodes later they quit, right?
Yeah.
But you actually like understand that to do this right, it's going to require scheduling, blah blah blah, time, and blah, blah, blah. It's going to take this much. There's all these other things I have to promote it. There's and I'm going to have to do episodes maybe not the way that I like, blah blah blah, and
Yeah.
it's going to take this time. So once you add that all up, that's like a practical decision you're making. They're like, okay, if I invest that time into writing a book or blah blah blah, that'll actually be a much better return on my investment or something like that. And you're
Yeah. I mean, that's something that I want to do. And I feel like I'm not good at feeding the beast, like creating something and just having to constantly feed the beast. That's why everyone asks, what about a membership? Why don't you start a
uh,
membership? And I'm like, that would require, I think, year round feeding of the beast.
yeah.
And
You're
it's
the
not
opposite of
something.
me. I actually love feeding the beast.
You love it, right? Which is
Yeah.
great. That's and that's why you have this amazing thing of Night
Yeah.
Owl Nation that you're able to keep up. I mean, it's been what, 3 years?
Yeah. 2
Yeah,
years Night Owl Nation. Yeah. And
2 years.
yeah.
And yeah, it's like seems to be going strong, and
Yeah. I
so it's
more than
suited to
anything,
your nature.
I'm learning a lot. I'm learning so much. I've never learned as much as I have in the last 2 years. So I think for me
That's
that's like the
amazing.
real benefit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to kind of wrap up this conversation, I know like we only cover like very little bit. Everyone go read Tough Titties
Oh yeah.
so that you can uh you know in her own words, her own memoir. You can hear her stories. But what would you say would be your message for the world? I know we said it before, but let's just repeat it. Well, what's your message for? Okay, I'm gonna word the question in a more practical way. What do you think is like the most common myth that you see people believe, like a false belief,
Mm-hmm. I
and
think
that you
it's
wish you can help them be like, wake up, like show
Yeah,
them.
I think it is one of the biggest myths or just instincts, wrong-headed instincts, is to please everyone,
Mhm.
to react to criticism of anything that you're doing from one person and say, "Oh, I got to change it." Because I don't want to turn off this person. I don't want to turn off that group. I want to be for, who are you for? Well, I'm for these people, but also if other, I am for people who love trolls, love and collect trolls, but also if people who love coffee want to join, then I could be for them too. Or people who hate trolls. I'm looking at a troll doll right now. That's what inspired me. And so like bending yourself, reshaping whatever you're doing to please everyone is going to make you for no one. You have to remember that for anything that you love or any person you follow and are so glad to find, for any, painting, movie, TV show, song, performing artist, singer, um, writer that you love and or influencer and are so glad that you discovered, there is somebody out there or many somebodies who say, not for me, or that sucks, why do you like it? And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that thing. I mean, I don't love Taylor Swift. I think I am sure that she's a genius, but it's just not for me. That doesn't mean that Taylor Swift has a problem and has to
Mhm.
go retool everything because Laura
Mhm.
Belgray doesn't like her. And so you have to remember that doesn't make you any less great, that somebody out there is saying, not for me, not my thing. Son, I don't get him. He's not for me. That is totally okay because
Mhm.
for that one person or however many people say, son's not for
Yeah.
me, there are so many people because you're so you who are like, son is amazing. I'll go to the ends of the earth and, shouting son's name from the rooftops because I worship son. And so, because you are being you and you're not bending
Yeah.
yourself to please everyone. So nothing is for everyone.
And I can really feel it, like this ever since like I started making content. I can feel that my community is really like, I'm attracting people that are like me. And when I joined Shrink Club, and like we have overlaps in our personality too, and I can see like,
Yeah.
oh wow, like everybody here is like us. And yeah, I really, and I think it also works on product level too, not just the person.
Yeah.
Because while you were saying that whole thing, in my mind I was like, holy shit, like in Night Owl Nation, what happened was when people joined, people started getting overwhelmed because there's so much content.
Mm-hmm.
So I stripped everything and I streamlined everything. But then like some of the other members were like, "Oh, what happened to all the content?" I was like, "Oh, I like those," and like I was like in this dilemma. I was like, "What do I do?" And this is why you
Yeah.
can't. This is why listen to feedback with caution,
Yeah.
because
Yes.
otherwise I
Right.
would have just switched right
Exactly.
back. Yeah.
Right. Right. Trust yourself on those things. And I mean, remember when Apple came out with the iPad and everybody was like, iPad, that's the name? That's a feminine hygiene product. That is the worst name I've ever heard. And now
Yeah.
iPads are all over the world. You can't
Yeah.
walk into a room or a coffee shop without seeing an iPad.
And I don't know if you remember, everybody made fun of it, that it's a big iPhone. It's basically a big iPhone. Like, what's the
Right.
use of this, right?
Right. Exactly.
But
What am
then
I
it
going to do
turned
with
out to
that?
be like
And now,
there
yeah,
is
every time you buy a coffee, they're
something
turning
to a
around,
big
spinning
iPhone
around that
that's different than
iPad
an
for you to tip them.
iPhone. Okay. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot more to cover, but like I think we got to a good place.
Yeah,
Thank you
I
so
think
much
we
for your
did.
time.
Thank you,
I
son.
love
You asked
everything you
great
do.
questions.
Obviously, yeah, I respect you. You know, I you are pretty much the reason why I got into copywriting, because after I
Wow.
took CopyCure like almost 10 years ago, is
Holy
maybe
crap.
like 6-7 years ago, is when I started getting into like copywriting. Before that, I just considered myself just a designer,
Mm-hmm.
and now I teach storytelling. So like you know, and it all started from CopyCure. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and now you've got a movement of your own. So I'm so impressed. And yes, the love and respect, very mutual. I'm so impressed by you, son.
So I'm going to put all of your links in the show notes.
Great.
Where can people find you? Where do you want to send them to? Where can they buy your book?
Okay, so come to my website, which is talkingshrimp.com, and you will find my book there. You can also go straight to toughtittiesbook.com. Don't go to toughtitties.com. I can't tell you what you're going to find, but toughtittiesbook.com leads to my website. And buy it there. And I have freebie. When you buy my book, I have, depending on how many copies you buy, from 1 to 3, I have bonuses there that are about storytelling and book
Ooh.
writing. And yeah, they're good. So buy it there. All the booksellers are there. You can buy it from any bookseller, but you want to enter your info there. And at talkingshrimp.com, I've got freebies. You don't have to buy a book, just enter your email. I have a guide to subject lines, non-sucky subject lines. And also I have a thing called Story Goldmine that helps you mine your everyday life for stories that sell. So I know your people are storytelling fans and aspiring great storytellers. So those things are for them over at
Yeah, we're
talkingshrimp.com.
we're definitely like in line. A lot of you guys will
Yeah,
find Laura's newsletter so helpful. If you haven't joined her newsletter yet, definitely do that first. I'll put all the links in the bottom. Thank you,
great.
Laura, for your time. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone, for
son. You rock.
listening.
You are a star.
Thank you. I'll see you all next week. And cheers, everyone. Bye.